Wassup Scrapyard. For today's video, I wanted to share with you guys 10 tips that'll help you guys get Apex Predator. These 10 tips helped me out immensely throughout my journey with Apex Legends. So without further ado, let's get it. Bam ba bam 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 ba bam 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 ba bam 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 ba bam bam. These tips can apply to any rank system, any ranked map, and I especially wanted to discuss these tips with you guys right before next season when the new map comes out. And just to preface this, it goes without saying, the number one best tip overall, tip number 0, I guess you could say, would be to play with a team. I'll just be the pessimist here and say that you are not getting Apex Pred or anywhere near it if you're solo queuing. So let's just get that out of the way. But for the first tip, I'd like to go over disengaging. Knowing when to disengage from a fight. There are many instances in which you should be disengaging from a fight that you're in, and way too many for me to go over. But in general, if the fight is not going your way, or if it's taking a lot longer than it should, then you should disengage. The best moment being when your teammate's been knocked, or when you have absolutely no loot. And a lot of the times you're actually disengaging to re-engage. And what that disengagement allowed in that moment is an opportunity for you and your team to reset. Disengaging is also important when you do spot a third party inbound. But there are other times that disengaging won't be an option. As a Lobo main, I can get out of any situation, but very seldom can my teammates do the same. Just because your team's weak doesn't mean you should disengage. Just because you have minimal loot doesn't mean you should be disengaging every time. It is all situational. And that's all I need you guys to understand, is that it's situational. I can make a 20-minute video about this topic alone. Understand that there are moments where you must disengage, and understand that there will be moments where you may not be able to disengage. For the second tip, we could talk about the importance of rotations. And in this rank system, it's not important at all, but I have a feeling it'll be very important for next season. I'll keep this as general as possible. You're gonna land wherever you land on whatever map. The circle is gonna pull a different way every single time. If you ever find yourself in the center of the ring, move outwardly towards the edge of the zone. This is primarily for ring 1 and ring 2. And if you find yourself on the outside of the ring, you'll want to rotate to the far left or to the far right side of the circle, usually the side with more real estate to work with, and very rarely should you just beeline it straight to the center of the circle. That tip right there is what every rank grinder and every pro player does, whether they're conscious of it or not. Playing a recon character certainly helps for your rotations as well, and that is something that you're definitely going to want to do if they do fix this rank system for next season, because if they do a good job with it, they're going to make it really close to Season 13's rank system, and this prioritizes rotations over everything else. And my logic for my rotation instructions that I gave you just a minute ago is simply to help you avoid more third parties. Being on the edge of the zone is the safest for earlier games because you don't expect to be third party from from storm side. So what that allows you to do is keep your attention on in front of you. And once again, as an Apex Predator, you have to understand that everything that I'm saying is situational. That's the nature of a battle royale. But most of the time when I do make my way to the edge of the ring, continue rotating to the side that has more area to work with, and that usually coincides with an easier rotation for the next ring as well. How are we doing, Clash? Do we have a brain boner going on at all? Because I know I'm mentally stimulated right now. For the third tip, let's talk about ring knowledge. That's just pretty much predicting where the next ring will be. And this is especially important for rounds 3 to 5. On a new map like Divided Moon, nobody's going to know until about a season later. But for other maps that we've already been playing for the last several years like World's Edge and Olympus, these circles are the exact same as they've always been, with some deviation. The same goes for Storm Point and Kings Canyon. Through enough playing and observation, you can help yourself memorize where these endgame circles will be ahead of time, thus allowing you and your team to rotate easier for those next circles, way before other teams will. This is a very advanced tip, but it's a lot more intuitive than you think. Tip number 4, healing. I know this sounds very straightforward, but you'd be surprised the skill gap that exists between good and bad players when it comes to healing. I won't get into the specifics, all I'm going to say is carry batteries, and there should never be a moment when you're in the middle of a fight where you're doing absolutely nothing. If you're not actively fighting or working on getting new angles in a fight, then it's because you're weak and you should be healing. And if you're not actively healing, then you should be in the fight working around angles and helping your team out. There should never be an idle moment when you're in the middle of a fight. That is something that a lot of you guys have to get better at. Any second wasted doing nothing really puts you at a disadvantage for that fight. For the 5th tip, we could segue our way into reviving. Again, extremely situational, and you have to understand that. There will be moments where your teammate gets knocked. Sometimes the best thing to do is to hold your ground where you're at and to hold angles. Because most players, when they knock a person, are going to get extremely aggressive. And sometimes that might mean you have to back up from wherever you're at to get to a better spot, maybe like a head glitch or something, where you try to do maximum damage output on the enemy. If you can, usually they'll fall back and allow you time to reset. this is where you'd revive your teammate. And sometimes in this moment, you might even knock a player on their team. So now it's a 2v2, and most teams are going to back up when that happens. What I need you guys to understand is that yes, you should be putting a lot of thought behind revives. Not just blindly reviving your teammate in the wide open. Think about what the enemy team may do. Think about the angles that the enemy may have if you revive your teammate at X location. Think about revive baiting your teammate to drop the enemy team from high ground or out of wherever they're hiding. Think about falling back to your knocked teammate to provide cover for your other teammate that's going to revive him. Yeah, I know you probably never thought of reviving this deeply. There are many things that you have to get better at in this game. This is one of them. The sixth tip is my RP farmage system. I've said this so many times, but I put it in a new video, so I'll go over it briefly. Get kills off rip, whether you third party a nearby team or 50-50 a team off rip. Spend the center chunk of the game rotating and maybe picking on a couple third parties. And then around round 3, that's where you want to start finding a place for endgame. Most of the time it'll be inside of a building or on high ground, assuming that the game goes until round 5 or 6, which is what most ranked games aren't doing right now with this system. But next system, we should see a lot more round 5, round 6 endgames. That is if they change the rank system. For the 7th tip, let's talk about dealing with third parties. Just because you're getting third party doesn't mean you have to run away, and it definitely doesn't mean that you're automatically dead. Side tip that I can give you guys to get you more aware of when you're being third partied, it goes like this. In higher ranked lobbies, most of your engagements are going to be to medium to long distance to begin with. Eventually somebody gets a knock and then you push, blah blah blah. But in that time where the fight is medium to long distance, look around behind you every so often. If they cracked your shield, then turn around while you're healing to get a look behind you. What I mean is just quickly glance behind you every now and then when you're in those medium to long distance fights. And this is how I have spotted many incoming third parties. But if you are getting pinched and there's no escape, the best thing that you could do in these moments is pushing through an enemy team. Usually the one that's closest or a team that's weaker. Pushing through that team, eliminating them, and then turning and burning on the third party. And another way that you can help deal with third parties is disengaging from that fight and actually running the two enemy teams into each other. So that when you re-engage, you are now the third party. And that saved my ass a lot of times too. For the 8th tip, you guys really have to get better at communicating with your team. Communicate so much so to the point where it's almost like you're micromanaging your team. And that may be annoying for a lot of people. So don't say it in a condescending tone. But to get pred, you should be communicating everything. For the 9th tip, we'll talk about this idea of full sending. Full sending pretty much means if I stay here, I'm dead. So we have to full send this team. This typically happens in endgame situations, and when things get crazy, hectic, and chaotic in situations like this, lower skilled players tend to freak out and panic. So when it comes to a moment where you guys have to full send a team, and it gets to a point where you're feeling overwhelmed, calm down, breathe, and stay with your team. Do whatever your IGL says. This is kind of like a strength in numbers thing. It could be the most boneheaded play in the world, but you'd be surprised how many things you can survive when all 3 of you guys are holding each other's nutsack. Stay calm, stay together when you guys are full sending. And for the 10th tip to help you guys get Apex Predator is knowing when the games aren't going well and it's time for you to just get off. You might play with people you never played with before. They start selling cheeks. But you're so nice that you'll allow them to sell 700 of your RP before you finally say something and leave the game. It's completely okay telling your teammates, yo, we're not playing well, I have to go. My rule is if I go down about 300 RP, I'm done for the night. And you think it goes without saying. But again, I've met many people in the community that are just too nice to leave their teammates even when the games are going super bad. But if you really want Apex Predator, this is something you have to avoid. I've also seen many people literally lose 2,000 plus RP because they just don't know when to stop playing. Know when the games aren't headed in a good direction and take a break. Find a new team and hope for the best with them. These are my top 10 tips to hitting Apex Predator. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you guys want my credentials, I'm at 15 times Apex Predator. I have 150,000 plus kills on PC and console account. I am the #1 Loba. I'm a top 25 account in the whole wide world. And I've been playing this game since day one. I know a thing or two. If you guys liked the video, please subscribe, leave a like and a comment, and I'll see you guys next time. Bam ba bam bam bam. Bam ba bam 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 bam. Bam ba bam 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 bam. Bam ba bam 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 bam